Good. Okay. Okay, we're ready for a new mimer. This is a mimer from Achren Shal Pesach Tavshin Chav Hei from 1965, and we're getting ready for Pesach. So let's dive in here. Okay. So this mimer is based on a mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe, which was published 70 years ago. A series of mimarim that the Frierdiker Rebbe published for Pesach Tavshin Tes, 1949. So that's 70 years ago. And this mimer is based on that mimer. So we're going to be referring back to that mimer a lot. Okay. Let's go. That the Spirit of Hashem will be on him, upon him. On this is a quote from the Haftarah of Achren Shal Pesach. We know that Achren Shal Pesach is a day related to Mashiach and the future redemption. And the Haftarah, most of the Haftarah talks about Mashiach. So it says about Mashiach, the v'nachal of Ruach Havaya will be, the Spirit of God will rest on him, and he will have the scent of fear of God. The Garzev and Keves, and the wolf will lie with the lamb. These are all verses that describe that messianic age. But specifically, they describe Mashiach. So, the Frierdiker explains in his Maimon that these verses come to describe, the prophet describes the coming of Mashiach, may it be speedily in our days. Amen. So, and the psukim, these verses describe a number of things regarding Mashiach himself and the manner in which he will lead. So, first it describes the character of Mashiach himself. That it says, "V'nachal of Ruach Havaya," right? That he will be, will have the Spirit of Hashem that will be upon him. And then it describes his leadership, the way he will lead the people. That's with the verse, that he will have the scent of fear of God, which seemingly saying that seems to describe him, right? If he fears God, and that's what you'll be able to detect on him. So that describes him, not his leadership. So the Frierdiker explains that. So the Rebbe explains here why the Frierdiker describes this as a description of what Mashiach will do, how he will lead. This idea of this idea of that scent is relates to the way Mashiach will lead. Why? Because like we know, the Gemara says the Merech V'doin. It says, "But Verichai B'iras Havai." What does that mean? That Mashiach, how will he judge? With scent. Like he'll be able to sniff something out. He'll be able to smell you out. So so this idea is a reference to his leadership qualities, or the way, or the manner in which he will lead. So and then the verse continues that the wolf will lie with the lamb. Seemingly, when it talks about the wolf and the lamb lying together, that seems to describe the nature of the world at that time, right? Not Mashiach's leadership. So he explains, no, this is also part of his leadership, that he will lead in such a way that will cause, right? That will cause this to happen, the wolf to lie with the lamb, right? That Mashiach's leadership will be in such a manner that it will cause such a revelation of godliness in the entire world, not only with regard to humans, but even with regard to the animal kingdom, right? Like the verses that discuss the different animals that will become peaceful animals. Even when we talk about with regard to the inanimate, right? If you look at note 7, right? It says about that a stone will call out, meaning that Mashiach's leadership will affect not only humanity, but also the animal kingdom and even the inanimate, even the mineral. Like the verse continues, right, in this description of that messianic era, that that the world will be filled with the knowledge of God. So what does it mean, Mala ha'aretz? That the earth will be filled filled with knowledge of God. Shagam ha'aretz ha'gashmis that even the earth itself will be filled with this knowledge of God, right? So he translates this verse literally. When it says the world will be filled with the knowledge of God, what's the world? Meaning the people that live in the world. The world will be filled with that knowledge. But he says no, when it says Malahar, it doesn't just say people will be will have that knowledge, but the world itself will also have that. So we see that these verses describe both Mashiach's own character and his style of leadership, the manner of leadership, that he himself will be a man that will have the Spirit of God invested in him, and also that he will lead in a way of Ve'ericha Biras Havaya, the idea of Meirach V'doin, that he will sniff out, essentially, right? Get to the bottom of things with his scent, and also the idea of even the lion, the wolf lying with the lamb, is also the result of his form of leadership. That since he will fill the world will be filled with the knowledge of God due to his leadership, and that will affect not only human beings but even the animal kingdom and even the inanimate objects. Okay. Note 4. Let's just look quickly at these footnotes here, right? So the Rebbe says about Verichai beyiras Hashem, that the Friedrich Rebbe puts that in the category of his leadership, even though it seems to be a character trait, right? A quality of his own. But the Friedrich Rebbe puts it there. So that's what the Rebbe says. Valpiza move on. Bepashas mashmaisa b'maimer d'merich v'doin. The Friedrich Rebbe adds Verichai beyiras Hashem, and he adds merich v'doin, that he will rule with scent, because again we're talking about his manner of leadership. Yeah. Note 5. That says that Mashiach will bring about the revelation of godliness in the world. So he says, So, I'm sorry? Right. So, it's not right, exactly. So it's not him, it's how he rules the world. Yeah. And you see what the Rambam says over here in the bottom, the star, right? That this idea that the world will be perfected is a result of Mashiach's efforts, his leadership. In other words, we're saying here that this idea that the wolf will lie with the lamb is the result of Mashiach, right? So the Rebbe says even the Rambam talks about the world being filled with the knowledge of God. He's only talking about humanity, but that's because he understands the verse, the wolf will lie with the lamb, as a metaphor. He doesn't take it literally, he understands it metaphorically. So therefore, so it's not really a contradiction. Depends on how your opinion is. But either way, the fact is that will be a result of Mashiach himself. Mashiach's effort, that he will fill the world with that knowledge. Okay. Right? Like we have the ruling of Chassidus, which is that these verses are to be taken literally. So when it says that the wolf will lie with the lamb, so the Rambam understands that as a metaphor, right? So there are different opinions as to exactly what the meaning of these verses are. But Chassidus rules that it's to be taken literally, understood literally. That the nature of the entire world will have been transformed, not just of humanity. Okay. Let's keep going. So Medaik Ba'Maimer, the Tzarech Lavan, Friedrich Rebbe asks, we have to understand, if the world will be filled with the knowledge of God, why would we need a king? Right? If Mashiach is going to fill the world with this knowledge of God, so why does he have to be a king? In other words, Mashiach is going to be a teacher and he's going to be a king. But seemingly this idea of filling the world with the knowledge of God has to do with teaching. So once the world is filled with the knowledge of God, if the wolf can lie with the lamb, so why do you need a king? A king you need usually to keep everybody in line. If there's no government, right? If there's no leadership, then everybody, people will consume each other, right? There'll be anarchy. But if the world is all good, is completely reformed, so why would you need any? In the Western system, government is looked at least in America, by the founding fathers, as a necessary evil. That really there shouldn't be government, right? In an ideal utopian scenario, there should be no government. Why do you need government? Because otherwise there would be anarchy. So government's like a necessary evil. That's why you need the leadership, and that's why you want to keep it, according to certain political beliefs, you want to keep it as narrow as possible.
Metaphorically, is like a lion. So maybe
well, at this point, if
the
metaphor we're talking about Ze'ev is a wolf, but the point is that but why would you need it? If it's reformed, then why would you need any kind of oversight? Why would you need any kind of leadership in that sense, or any kind of rulership? Okay, so he says like this. What's the explanation? He says like this: when we talk about rulership, kingship, that means hisnasus. Hisnasus means that it's masha melech muvdol mirum me'am. The fact that the king is removed, he's above and beyond the people, beyond higher than his subjects. And even when we talk about the commands, the rules of the king, the laws of the king, even though seemingly when we talk about enacting laws, that is a sign of closeness on the one hand, because the king is engaging with his people, with his subjects, right? He's involved in their lives, so there's a connection that is formed. That the king is coming closer to the people in order to lead them according to his will. But still, nevertheless, even though the king enacts rules and laws, that on one hand is a sign of closeness, an interaction between the king and his subjects, nevertheless, how does he do this? He does it in a way that's removed from them. He decrees. In other words, the king generally doesn't want people to understand why he enacts some laws, because he wants it to be, he wants that obedience. And so therefore, he'd rather not understand, not rationalize the laws and not understand the reason for it. He determines this is how it is, he dictates it, and that's it. So in other words, that shows how the king is removed, how he's beyond his subjects. The same is true with regard to the people. So that's from the king's vantage point. The king himself is somebody that's on a higher level. He's totally removed from the people. And even when the king interacts with the people to lead them, he does it in that fashion of being removed from them, above them, beyond them. Right? He enacts laws without asking questions. He doesn't go through a democratic process. He's not polling anybody. This is how he wants it to be, and this is how it is. Right? So that's from his perspective. And what about from the people? So why do the people follow the king? Why are they obedient to the king and follow his laws? Not because they understand the reason for these rules, but because they fear the king. The king has to lead in a manner that the people fear him. So it comes out. So we see that even when the king himself is, like it says about Shalom al Mushiya, he was head and shoulders above the people. He was on a different level than everybody else. So that is with regard to him himself. But even when we call him a king, we know, like Ein Melech B'Layam, a king needs his people. He can't be a king without people, without subjects. But even there, when the king is leading his people, even there, what is emphasized is the gap between them. The fact that the king is above the people. He's removed from them. He's higher than them. And this is the difference between the interaction between a student and a teacher and a king and his subjects. How does a teacher teach his students? In a manner of coming close to the student. How does a teacher come close to a student when he teaches? And what does this mean? Because for a teacher to teach his students, he needs to tailor his understanding and the subject that he wants to transmit to the student. He needs to tailor it to the capacity of the student, to the student's intellectual ability. But in a manner that the student should be able to understand what he's teaching him. Right? So in other words, there's a closeness. What does it mean that there's a closeness? The teacher, in both instances, the king is interacting with his people. He's leading the people. So he's enacting laws for their society and maybe for the betterment of their society. So there's a certain closeness. We said that still there's a gap. A teacher also, he's imparting wisdom to his student. He's teaching his student. Here we're saying it's close. Why is there a closeness? Because for the teacher to teach the student, so that the student understands, the teacher needs to actually come down to that level of the student. He needs to be able to know what the student's intellectual capacity is, what he can understand, how he understands, how he sees things, and tailor the thought that he wants to teach him to the student. So the teacher has to come close to the student in that sense. Whereas by the king, he doesn't have to consider whether people can handle it or not. This is what I decided, and that's what we're going to do. Right? Whether the people like it or not, whether they understand it or not. Beyond their intellect. Okay. So the source of these two methods of interaction, the one with the king and his subjects, where the king is removed from the subjects, and even in their interaction, what's emphasized, the gap, the distance between them, and the interaction between a teacher and a student, that there's a closeness. So these two also have their source. We find it also in Torah. Why? So like he says in note 12, like everything in the world which comes from Torah, because like the Chazal say, that the Eibishter, God, looks into the Torah and he creates the world. The Torah is the blueprint for creation. So in other words, inside here he's saying that the way we find it by a teacher and a king and their interaction with the king with the subjects and the teacher with the student, we can also find it in Torah. But note 12 points out that really it's the opposite. Why is it that you find an interaction of a king and his subjects and a teacher and a student? Because that's how we find it in Torah, because everything comes from Torah. So in the source, so obviously we have to find this in Torah because it all comes from Torah. So how do we see this in Torah? The Yeshba Dugmas Shnei Yanim Elu. Within Torah, and understanding Torah, we also find these two things. There are things in Torah that are understandable. But the essence of Torah is beyond intellect. When Mashiach comes, we will have these two elements of Torah. Both the idea of the Torah as it's understandable, as it's in our intellect, and also as Torah is beyond our intellect. Both of these things will be revealed when Mashiach comes. This is why Mashiach is called teacher and king. In addition to the fact that Mashiach will teach Torah to the Yidden, and he will shepherd them, he would guide them and feed them a deep knowledge in the mystical, esoteric, hidden parts of Torah. For this reason, Mashiach is called a teacher. Since Mashiach will be teaching people the depths of Torah, and yet he himself will know a lot more.
So you're not going to megala that.
As much as he'll reveal, there will still be more that he will know that will remain beyond that. Yeah. How is he going to reveal that? There are going to be things that the person that we can't understand. The Mashiach is going to understand things at a deeper level. So how's he going to reveal that? Because he's going to try and reveal everything, right? So how's he going to reveal that? So he says, so that is where the idea of kingship comes in. So we ask the question, why if the time of Mashiach, the world will be filled with the knowledge of God. Everything will be transformed. There won't be any evil. There won't be a threat of people consuming each other and fighting with each other. So why would we need a king if a king is seemingly just to keep people in line, to prevent anarchy? So why would we need it in that time? So the Rebbe explains, because there are two roles that Mashiach is going to fill. One is he's going to teach us Torah in a manner that we understand. And there'll be obviously the great secrets of Torah, things that are beyond our comprehension now, that Mashiach, in the time of redemption, Mashiach will teach it to us and we'll understand it. That's the teacher part of Mashiach. But what's the king function of Mashiach? Not to keep people in line, but to reveal to us things that are beyond understanding, things that we can't understand. So just as we find by a king, that the king's manner of leadership is in a manner that he is beyond the people, what's felt as the gap, the distance between the king and the people. So the same is true with regard to the things Mashiach is going to teach us, the things that he could teach us that we can understand. That's like a teacher. There'll be a closeness. He'll be able to teach it to us in a way that we can understand. But there'll be things that'll be beyond our intellect. And so how's he going to teach it to us? Like a king. Meaning that interaction will be like one of kingship, distant. He'll teach it to us in sort of a transcendent kind of a way, where we don't understand that. So this is all from the Friedrich Rebbe's memory. So the Rebbe adds like this: l'chayra, dalpi hayidu shalim that Torah the Mashiach b'shiyilma des kala yeba'ifin deriyah shalamayim asaga. It says Mashiach is going to teach the people in a manner of re'iyah, seeing, which is higher than understanding. Move on mizeh. Then yanim sheish b'ifin the melachim in yanim ke'elu she'enam yichayim lavi begilei afilu b're'iyah shalamayim aseichel. When we say that Mashiach, based on what we said, that there are two things. There's the way Mashiach is going to be a teacher and the way he's going to be a king. As a teacher, he's going to teach us things we can understand. As a king, that means he's going to teach us things that are really beyond our intellect. He's going to overwhelm us. It's not going to be based on our ability to comprehend. He's going to reveal it to us in a certain way. So the Rebbe says, based on this, we can explain that level of what Mashiach is going to teach us is something that's higher than intellect. Right? He's going to teach us in a way that Re'iyah, seeing, that's higher than understanding. Right? So in other words, then Yadim Sheish Be'ah from the Melech, and Yadim Ke'elu She'enim Yichem Lavi Begila Afilu B'Re'iyah Shalamayim HaSeichel. Afal Pikein, Mitzad Zeh Shemashiach Yeh Gam Melech, Yigal Yisrael Gam in Yadim Elu, Ela Shagili Yadim Elu Yeh B'derech Makif. Sorry. In Torah, when it comes to, he's saying like this, we're talking about even beyond that. You have like this, when we talk about understanding, so there's understanding and then there's seeing. They're two different things. When we talk about understanding something, what does that mean? You have a certain intellectual capacity and ability. You think about something, you think about it deeply, and then you understand it, right? But then there's seeing something. You see something that you see it as it is. Here already, your ability to understand what you're seeing, to be able to process it, is not necessarily relevant. You're taking the thing as it is. Or put it in other terms. When we're sitting around the table, we're learning, right? Everybody understands what they're learning in their own way. Everybody takes it in their own way, besides just what speaks to you. We're not talking about just, the way it resonates with you. Some person is moved by this part, somebody is moved by another topic. But even the same thing, we're looking at the same thing, we're understanding the same thing. No two people understand it the same way. We all understand it based on our own mind and our own intelligence. But when we see something, here everybody sees the same thing. When you're looking at something, everybody's looking at the same thing. Right? So here it's not about the person. It's not about your own abilities. That's something that's beyond the person. That's beyond your own internalized capacity. Or to put it in the words of Chassidus, you have the kalim and you have the oir. You have the light and you have the vessel. Intellect is a vessel. It's a vessel. Everybody's vessel is different. It can handle whatever it can handle in a certain way and modifies the light or processes the light according to its vessel. But then there's the light itself, which is objective. It's not a subjective thing. The light is what it is.
But you
Right?
experience it subjectively.
As you try to process it and internalize it and understand it. But the seeing of it, that's the same. Right? So those are two ways of understanding something. Right? This idea also of Mashiach comes like now there's a more emphasis on teaching like visually. Right? You can see something. Obviously when you see it, you understand it differently. Right? Than the story like the Rav who was a new rabbi in town, who was straight out of school and just fresh with his rabbinic ordination, and somebody brought to him an animal to ask if the animal was kosher or not. So he looks at it and he says, "Look, if this is a lung and this is a hole, then then it's not kosher." Or it is. In other words, he knows what the book says, but when he's looking at an actual part of the animal, it's a whole different experience. I know what I'm looking at. So there's seeing it and there's understanding it, right? They're different things. But even that's part of learning. Even that's part of the learning. So when we say that Mashiach is going to be a king, so we're talking about teaching us in a way that's even beyond the learning that is through seeing. It's hard to fathom what that means.
What's the difference between the Friedrich and the Sofer? What is the Moshe?
Because the Rebbe is saying, the Rebbe is Moisef, that based on this we could say that what Mashiach is going to teach us as a king is even higher than the Al Pi Re'iyah. Pashtus, you just say that would be what it means. Because there's the being mashpia, the das, that's in the understanding. And what about re'iyah? That's the Rebbe brings in this idea of re'iyah. That when you see it, that teaching it in a way of seeing, that's also included in teaching. So when we say that he's going to be a melech, it's even beyond even that. There's the story the Alter Rebbe brings about the Arizal, that the Arizal was one Shabbos, and the students of the Arizal were sitting around, and they see that the Arizal was dozing off. Right? It looked like he was falling asleep, but they noticed that his lips were moving. So clearly something was going on. So afterwards, he said that what he experienced when he was dozing off, he was being taught, or he experienced information was revealed to him, some information that for him to explain it to his students, there are two versions. Either it would take him 60 years or 80 years to explain what he saw. So he saw it in just a few minutes, a few moments maybe even, but to articulate it and to explain it in a way that should be understandable would take 60 or 80 years. So what does that mean? You can see something, and it's totally beyond your intellect, and to be able to bring it into intellect would take such a long time, take a lifetime to be able to explain it. So that's understanding something on a level that's beyond even intellect. Okay, so the Rebbe is saying that when we talk about this level of king, Mashiach as a king, so we're talking about secrets of Torah or aspects of godliness that are totally beyond even this idea of seeing. Okay, so Mamshech Ba Maimer, so Friedrich Rebbe continues in his Maimer, the Kol Zeh, that all of this is actually the last line in the first chapter of the Maimer of the Friedrich Rebbe. He summarizes, he says, the Kol Zeh, Ba Dafka Yidei, let's skip that a second. But Dafka Yidei Akdamas Avedid Zman HaGolus. That's basically the line in the end of the first chapter. That all of these things, meaning that Mashiach being a teacher to teach us the secrets of Torah, that we can understand it, and Mashiach being a king, that he could teach us, that's what the Rebbe says here. Hainu Heina Ashpa de Rav, Heina Ashpa de Melech, that's the Rebbe is explaining what the Friedrich Rebbe is saying. That what is it? All of this, that both Mashiach as teacher and Mashiach as king, all of this comes as a result of our service in exile. What we're doing now in Galus, our serving Hashem in Galus, is a preparation, is what will lead, what will be the result of this effort will be Mashiach being a teacher and a king.
So we're paying it forward with our suffering and goals? That's what
We're leading to it, yeah, we're working up towards the revelation of Mashiach. We've talked about in the past that Mashiach is not a reward, the time of redemption is not a reward for our good behavior. That we do nice things and Mashiach is a reward. It's not a reward, it's the sum total of what we do.
it's the consequence.
Right.
It's the result.
Right. Okay, let's look at note 17. The Rebbe says like this: "Kapir shapashut b'kol zeh, or kamuvan gam mizeh shekol hagiluim dasal l'tuim b'masein v'avidzin b'zman hagolos." The Rebbe is just pointing out that we know everything that Golos, exile, is a preparation for Mashiach, meaning that everything that happens in Golos is a preparation for Mashiach. So they're saying that all of this, if we're talking about what's going to be when Mashiach comes, obviously it's the result of what we did in Golos, right? So it's not just what he's talking about specifically in the Maimer, but in general, this is a general statement. Okay, so what does this mean? How is it that our service in exile, what we do, our service of Hashem now in exile, is a preparation for this idea of when Mashiach comes, that Mashiach will be a teacher, meaning he'll teach us the secrets of Torah in a way that we'd understand, and that Mashiach will teach us in a manner of king, that he'll be teaching us in a way that's beyond our comprehension. He'll reveal to us things that are beyond understanding and even beyond this ability to see something, which is beyond intellect, but even beyond that. How is that the result of our service in Golos? So first we have to understand, what is it, what is our service in Golos? What is it that we're doing now that is a preparation? And then we have to understand, once we know what it is that we're doing, or how it is we operate, then the question will become, how does that lead to that? Okay, so but first, what are we doing? So it's like this. So in order to understand the connection between our service and exile, with the revelation that will be when Mashiach comes, so Maktim Ba'Maimer, the Rebbe first prefaces it in his Maimer that explains like this: due to the incredible concealment and challenges and obstacles that a person faces in the time of exile. So the primary mode of serving Hashem in exile is with nitzachim, is with perseverance. To be steadfast in our observance of Torah and mitzvahs in actuality. Without, what does it mean to persevere? Means to not consider, not to deal with any challenges that might arise. So, in other words, there has to be a feeling, an attitude that I'm going to serve God, I'm going to observe Torah and mitzvahs, come what may. Doesn't matter. The challenges are not something that you're going to deal with. You're not going to weigh the consequences or the challenges or the obstacles. You're going to do it no matter what the circumstance. This generally is the serving Hashem with self-sacrifice that's beyond intellect. What is Mesiras Nefesh? What is self-sacrifice? Is that a person doesn't go through a process. It doesn't come to a decision to do it. We've talked about this a number of times in the past. What's Mesiras Nefesh? There's the sentiment that you find it even in secular thinking, that that a life is only worth living if you're willing to die for something. Okay, so to be willing to die for something is very noble, right? And you can call it self-sacrifice, and certainly you'd rather live for it. But give me liberty or give me death, right? Famous statement of Patrick Henry. So what does that mean? So that's very noble, right? But that's a choice that a person makes. I know how important liberty is to me. And so I come to the conclusion that if I don't have liberty, if I don't have freedom, I'd rather be dead, rather die. Okay? So that's a decision, a choice that a person makes, right? That's not Mesiras Nefesh. On the contrary, even we look at something like that and say it's so noble, it's selfless. But the truth is not selfless. On the contrary, it's extremely selfish. This is so intolerable that the person says, I'm willing to die for it. That's the ultimate self-expression, self-actualization. I mean, it seems a little counterintuitive, but that's what it is. The person is expressing his selfhood, his self-actualization by giving his life for something. You want to know how important this is to me? He's willing to die for it. That's not Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh is not about self-actualization. On the contrary, Mesiras Nefesh is not considering self. It's about total self-nullification. Exactly. Why is a Jew willing to die for Torah and mitzvahs? Not because he's trying to make any kind of grand statement or gesture. Not because he decided that this is more important than life. Because he can't choose any other way. Because what's most important is God and what God wants. And If there's a challenge to what God wants, so that's it. So he gives his life. It's not any grand gesture or self-actualization. It's the opposite, right? So Mesiris Nefesh means beyond reason. Self-sacrifice is beyond reason. It's not a rational conclusion, because a person could make a rational argument for why he should give his life for something. But Mesiris Nefesh is not rationalizing this idea that you'd rather die for something. It's not a cause that you're willing to die for. There's no other way. This is how it is. So what's Nitzachim? This perseverance, or specifically we talk about Netzach, the more familiar term, right, in the 10 spheres, or the 10 faculties. Netzach is what leads to self-sacrifice. What's Netzach? So you have like this. You have. How are we doing on time? We okay? A few minutes. We're still good. Oh, okay, good. So you have like this. When you have in the 10 attributes, you have like this. You have Chabad, Chagas, and Nehim. Right? Chabad is your intellectual faculties. Chachma, Bina, Das. Those are your intellectual faculties. You have Chagas, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes. Those are the emotional faculties, primarily love and fear. And then you have Nehim, Netzach, Chod, Yisoid, Malchus. Sometimes included, don't include, whatever. That's another topic. Netzach, Chod, Yisoid. Those don't generally get a lot of publicity, right? So you have your intellect. You understand something, and then you have your feelings, the way you feel about something, and then you have your extremity. So if you put it together in the bodily function, your intellect is in the mind. That's the head. Your emotions are the heart. And what about Netzach, Chod, and Yisoid? Where are they in the anatomy? So we say in Pasach Aliyah, right? What? That they're the extremities. They're beyond. They're outside of the body. Right? They're levar megufor, below the body. Right? Netzach v'hoid train shaken. Right? They're beyond. They're beneath the body. So you have like chesed, it's the right hand, the left hand, but then you have the lower part. Right? So the legs, the thighs. So what it means is like this, practically speaking. The intellect is something that's very personal, that's within the person, the way they understand something. Feelings are, again, within the person himself. This is how the person feels. Netzach, Hoid, and Yisoid, those are, let's focus on Netzach and Hoid. Here we're going to focus on Netzach. Let's just focus on Netzach. Is what happens when you don't feel that? So in other words, I know that I understand that you're a person that I should be kind to. And because I like you, because I've thought in my mind about your qualities, and so I decided that I like you. So now I've developed feelings for you, and I like you. Because I like you, I want to do something. I want to do you a favor, right? And the favor is the expression of that feeling or of that idea. But what happens when I don't have that feeling or that idea? I don't know whether I don't have an opinion about you. Will I be kind to you? I don't even have the process of thinking that it's good to be kind. I don't have a feeling about being kind. I'm indifferent. So Netzach, that's the idea of being kind anyhow. Being kind even absent the feeling or the idea. That's the perseverance. That's the application, the act of the kindness without the feeling.
So it's an instinct at that point? Or
It's in more an action, more than an instinct. If anything, you can call it almost an action. It's the act of doing with absent the feeling. Or it's another, you can do with the feeling, and then you have the Netzach and the Chesed and the Chacham. You can have them all together. But it's something that goes beyond it, right? So what are we saying here? That in the time of exile, we don't have the intellect. We'll get into that soon. The Rebbe is going to explain it a little bit more. We don't have the intellect, the understanding of godliness. We don't even have a proper feeling for God, proper emotion, love and fear of God. So what do we have? We have netzach. We have the perseverance. That a Jew in exile, without the intelligence and without the emotion, is committed to God. Right? And that commitment is what leads then, that perseverance, that stubbornness and commitment, come what may, in spite of whatever hardships the person might face, that's netzach. Persevering, doing it even when there are obstacles. In other words, put in the context of what we just said, even if there's something that's sort of obstructing my feeling towards you, even if that's blocked. So in other words, I'm not feeling it right now. Nevertheless, I still do it. That's the perseverance of netzach, the idea that you do it anyway. Okay, let's continue here. So V'inyanu, the second paragraph of chapter 2. V'inyanu. That's what leads to Mesiris Nefesh. Why? Because it's not intellect. Because it's not intellect. Right? In the time of the temple, the Jewish people were on a very high level. In addition to the fact that they were very intelligent, they understood a lot, they were able to understand Torah on a much deeper level. In addition to that, as we talked about before, we had the idea of Rav and Melech, right? We said that there's understanding and then there's seeing, which is another level, right? So in addition to understanding, being Bali Asagi G'dola, they understood thoroughly, they understood deeply, but in addition to that, when they would go up, go up for the pilgrimage holidays, they'd go up to the Beis HaMikdash, so they also saw godliness, seeing which is higher than understanding. Like the Pasuk says, Shalish Pam Bashana Yiro Gomer. Like it says 3 times a year, they would go up to see, right? Or to appear. But Kishem Shabal Lirois, Kachba Lirois. Right? In addition to being seen, they would also see. What would they see? They would see revelation of godliness. But when it talks about exile, what does it say? Ani Yeshena, that I'm asleep. Vamrazal begalusa. Chazal interpret. What does it mean? Ani Yeshena. What does God mean when He says that He's asleep? Meaning in exile. In exile, it's a state of sleep, or that the Jew is sleeping. Meaning in exile. Just as in sleep, when a person sleeps, so all his internal faculties are concealed, beginning with intellect. That when a person is sleeping, so his intellect sort of leaves, or is concealed, and what's left is only that is sort of an imagination, right? The idea of dreams, right? So when a person is sleeping, the intelligence is still there, but it's concealed. And there's a residue of that intelligence in that the person can have dreams, right? In dreams, sometimes you can understand things or experience things which at the end don't really add up completely. Why? Because your intellect is not functioning properly, right? So therefore, the things that don't add up make sense to you in your dream because you're not making sense, right? But there's still but there's still sort of a function, there is some limited functionality of the intellect. But where is the primary concealment when a person's sleeping is when we talk about seeing, about sight. To the extent that this is even apparent in the body. When a person's sleeping, his eyes are closed. So the person sees with his eyes. And when a person's sleeping, his eyes are closed. So we see that the primary concealment of when a person's asleep is seeing. He doesn't see. The same is true with regard to the sleeping. That exile is a metaphor for that sleeping is a metaphor for exile. That the ikar ahelim the golus so masha bismana golus lo yeshna iabelikus. That in the time of exile, what's the primary lacking? What's lacking primarily is this idea of seeing godliness. We don't see the signs. We don't see God's miracles, the things He does for us. And even when we talk about understanding God, which does exist, just like we said in the metaphor. With sleep, with regard to sleep, that with sleeping, you don't have intellect and you don't have vision. But what's really lacking is vision. Vision you don't have at all. Intellect, there's a residue of intellect. There's some form of it. So the same is true with regard in the analog when we talk about exile. We don't see godliness, and even when we talk about comprehending godliness, so we have some kind of comprehension, and yet it's still no comparison to the understanding that we had during the temple time. To the extent that what we understand now in godliness, in comparison to the way it was in temple times, is the example would be like a person whose intellect is operating when he's sleeping to the way it is when he's awake, which obviously is no comparison. Right? When a person's awake, they're intelligent, they can understand deep concepts. When a person's asleep, it's all fantasy. Yep. So mitzad zeh, and due to this, the fact that a person, when we're in exile, we don't see and we don't understand. So because of that, gam avavir is managol senekidbay. So therefore, also his love and fear of God are not proper, are not the way they should be. Do we still have time to continue or no? No. Okay. Well. Let's stop here. We're not going to get through it. We'll stop over here. But the point is like this. We're making the point that now in the time of exile, so what's active, how does a Yid serve Hashem in Galus? Through this idea of Netzach. Netzach, perseverance, which is not rational, is not reasonable. And that's why a person has self-sacrifice, because self-sacrifice is not a rational, reasonable process that he goes through. It's a total stubbornness and commitment that is non-rational. Why is that how we operate in time of exile? Because in exile, this idea of intellect and seeing, which is beyond intellect, is not present. right? We don't see godliness, and we don't understand God to the same extent as in temple times. So what are we left with? We're left with Netzach. As we'll continue that thought, we'll finish that idea in the next class.